Hello, my name is Katie Driscoll, and I am elated to welcome you to the Widen in the Circle Pathways to Friendship Annual Conference. This year, although we gather virtually, it is in the spirit of celebrating connections. Widen in the Circle has been focused on building friendships between people with and without disabilities since 2012. These efforts have grown and expanded over the past decade, and people present today and many others have made immeasurable contributions to this project. I would like to thank the ARC of Massachusetts and the Department of Developmental Services for their ongoing collaborative efforts and deep commitment to advance inclusion through personal relationships in the lives of people with disabilities. The Pathways to Friendship team would like to specifically recognize former DDS Commissioner Elin Howe, Deputy Commissioner Larry Tumino, and the Create in Our Commonwealth initiative that sparked greater velocity in building community and connections in DDS services in Massachusetts. We thank members of the Widen in the Circle Advisory Committee and the 24 residential pathways providers who have participated formally in the last 5 years, many of which who continued amidst a pandemic and a workforce crisis. Thank you to our partner in research, CEDAR, which is the Center for Developmental Disabilities Evaluation and Research at the Eunice Kennedy Shriver Center at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Thank you to the self-advocates and families who continue to inform our work and our communities. And all of our mentors and supporters, including Jim Ross, Marian Brennan, and Jack Yates. Now, with much honor, I would like to call upon Leo Sarkisian, Executive Director of the ARC of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Katie, and I want to join Katie in welcoming you all, and as well as thanking, along with her, all the folks that have been so essential, because this is a collaboration, a true collaboration. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to get share the screen with you and spend a couple of minutes sharing. Okay, great. So I can't say enough about the partnership aspect and the collaboration between the Department of Developmental Services, of course, the ARC, and then really over 30 organizations. I didn't do the count yesterday. If I counted, I bet you it's even more than that, but you know, I like to underestimate. So it's so important because really localities is where the work happens, right? It's not in some sphere up in the world. We're trying to help make something happen together and on the ground for individuals. And the project's founded on All Our Lives Matter. DDS recognized, and a lot of us have recognized the inequity faced by and among our constituents. It unfortunately continues, but our work addresses these barriers by advancing social inclusion and friendship. And again, our work together. One of the things that since, because of our focus on social inclusion and friendship or long-lasting relationships, it's good to look at this Harvard study of adult development that started in 1938. They looked at generations of people at Harvard and eventually included women, by the way. At first it was just men. And bottom line of their findings was that most people can increase their happiness just by relationships. And that on average, 50% of people's general level of happiness might be determined by genetics, but a lot more is determined as well through relationships. They keep us happier and healthier. But the other, news is 1 in 5 Americans report being lonely, right? I don't know how you're doing. I don't like the idea of feeling lonely myself. But what do you think about the people we support, or our friends and family members? What do you think that quotient is for them? And then in 1943, Abraham Maslow talked about the needs hierarchy, which also ties in with that study, and almost 100 years ago, right? And look, right after breathing and food, so some basics, and right after safety is love and belonging. These are building blocks, building blocks that shouldn't be determined by our age, our social needs, our strengths, or our weaknesses, or our abilities or disabilities. Relationships don't magically happen. I wish they did. Now, let's face it, a lot of us might have personality where we build relationships, right? And we're working at it, even if we're depressed. But whether you have a disability or not, sometimes it's hard to build relationships. We need support. And support comes through family, friends, and staff. And staff are more important than ever today, not just because of COVID, but also because of the fragmentation sometimes in our communities. And inclusion and friendships are more important than ever. So you're essential. Those of you that are watching this, that are staff, you're very essential, and not just because of COVID, like I said. So together we advance belonging. Here are some of the ways we advance it. And again, together, and hopefully even more so locally, we're going to see it happen as we come out of COVID. Just to give you a picture of that. And here's some reactions. I know Sarah's with us today and she'll talk later, and our Lex Rex friends that Phoebe's worked with. You know, just a lot of positive feedback, not just about the toolkits, but about the support and the consultation. We continue to grow our inclusive opportunities, say the Lex Rex friends. Pathways is such a great resource and it connects us with qualified professionals who are committed to creating inclusive opportunities and friendships for people with and without disabilities. But what Kate doesn't know is she's even more important to us because she's the doorway to the community, right? So we'll keep that in mind. And just to start my closing screens, these are you want to really encourage you to always use these. And I know the team does, but it's there for all of us to take advantage of, for family, friends, and staff. And finally, geez, that sentence keeps popping up. Inclusion and friendship is more important than ever. Let's keep learning, but let's also keep advancing. We are social beings. Thank you all for being with us today again. And I get to introduce Christine Clifford, our partner from UMass Medical School. And she's been with the project, oh my God, for at least 5 to 6 years now. It feels like I'm probably overestimating that one, but you've been there from the beginning, Christine. You
From the beginning,
have
yes.
advanced degree in our field in health and policy and public health. And you're here, you've been looking at the program and looking at results. So thank you for being with us, and let me hand you the ball.
Great. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen and my slides. Okay. Can you all see that? Great. So thank you, Leo, for that introduction. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christine Clifford. I'm part of the Center for Developmental Disabilities Evaluation and Research at the Shriver Center, which is part of the UMass Chan Medical School. And as Leo mentioned, we've been with Pathways since the beginning and collecting data and looking at different aspects of the data over time. So in an interest of time in today's meeting, we're going to kind of keep the data discussion at a high level so you can move on to some other more fun things. But we do want to kind of report what happened in the past year, this sort of what we thought would be post-COVID, but never really turned out to be post-COVID. So as you probably remember, we've always kind of taken a three-pronged approach to collecting the data. We did it slightly different this time. We surveyed the participants, and then we attempted to survey some of the providers who had dropped out of Pathways. And then we ran a focus group with the providers that were continued in Pathways and the facilitators. We had 72 participants at the end of May. And so that's the data we're working with today. So reported from that survey data, 44 participants, or about a little more than 60% of our participants, indicate they have at least one or more friend. So that's a big increase from our first year, right? So we've seen this progress over time, but there's still quite a few that don't report having friends. And that is based on our very strict definition of a friend who is someone who's not paid, who's not a member of the family, or is also not in services with the participant. But we did ask this year as well, like if people identified others beyond that definition as friends. And 60 of those participants identified at least having one friend. And that is mostly staff, friends from their group homes, from their day programs, family members, so people who are connected to them in those ways. But again, there's still about, so that's 85% of our group identified having some connections. But again, there's still about 15% who indicated they don't have any connection. And there was one person that said they had 30 or more friends. So I'm not quite sure on that data point, but I'd like to meet that person if they have 30 or more friends. So we asked on the survey what people thought were their barriers to making friends. And, you know, we still see some of the same information. There are physical and behavioral concerns, mental health concerns, and ongoing, you know, communication challenges for some people. Some people are just, you know, some people are just difficult. They're picky who they spend time with. They only want to do certain activities. They only want to try certain things. So that can be a barrier. There's still a lack of reciprocation, or some people are still learning how to reciprocate in the friendship, right? They're still learning that piece and they're building towards that. Some of the people we support are just, you know, they're really not interested in socializing, or, you know, they've just made a decision. They don't want to make a friend right now. And then of course, there's still some concerns around staff and this lack of staff buy-in and a lack of belief that, you know, people with intellectual disability either don't want friends or don't know how to make friends, or, you know, why would someone want to be a friend with someone with intellectual disability? And of course, there's also larger staffing issues everywhere. One of the other questions we asked at this point too was, even if people weren't making friends, we felt like they were making progress. They were moving forward, and maybe they hadn't made that real tight connection with a friend, but they were moving towards that. So we asked people like where they saw that progress. And so for some people, they're exploring things that will help them make that connection better. For example, communication technologies, maybe some OT/PT that would help them be more active in the community. Making sure there's an actual goal in someone's ISP to make sure that there's some very concentrated effort towards making that friend. One person reported they've increased their time in the community from 2 hours to 4 hours, right? So there's this progression for people. One participant indicated that, you know, with employment, they're starting to organically make friends because they're out working, they're making those connections where they work. Some people are just learning how to make that conversation and starting conversations with strangers or with others, and then having staff assist them with that. Others learning how to take the bus by himself, right? And so he's now spending more time in the community without staff. Another participant was provided safety training in the community. So these are all steps towards making those friendships. And then another person reported that there's just an increase in confidence in trying to work through some of these things. So we asked people how they were making, what their top 3 processes were, or their processes were to actually make connections. And there's a lot more data behind this, but I'm just giving you sort of the highlights here. But we asked, you know, how are you actually identifying, you know, social connections? And, you know, the top 3 responses were, you know, we're asking the participant, who do you want to be friends with? Who do you want to hang out with? We're getting feedback from staff and what kinds of positive interactions they see in from family. We asked, how are you identifying community activities? And we're talking about staff connections and making that connection, having the staff help make that connection, looking at community mapping and person-centered planning. We're talking about how do you identify what their interests are. So we're using interest inventories and person-centered planning and ISPs. And then we talked about, you know, what strategies are you as staff actually using to support the person, you know, when they're in there, and what's working for them. And one of the top responses was, you know, being a regular, right? Going back and back again and trying again having a one-to-one match. So having that connection with one person that really supports the participant. And again, the staff connections, making sure that, you've got buy-in from the staff. And then what we see as ongoing support needs are, again, staffing ratios, making sure we have the staff to support this, looking at role modeling for the individuals, and, helping train them to understand the reciprocation part of friendship. So that was the participant piece. So we did send a survey to providers who had who could no longer participate in Pathways, and we did only get 4 responses. So, but I did want to share with you what some of the responses were. So we asked them why they were no longer participating, and one of them said they had developed their own in-house program, but the others had reported they just don't have the staff or the time at this point to do that. They did indicate that, the interest surveys and the other tools they received from the facilitators and the one-to-one sessions were really helpful from them. And then, they learned, they got great ideas from other providers, and they reported that, they felt like the community was really willing to work with them, but that, they as providers really needed to set the stage. And again, the ongoing challenges of staffing, we're hearing repeatedly. So then we had the focus groups with the providers and facilitators, and we asked them, what they thought worked and what didn't. So this is what, those providers and the facilitators felt worked. The providers reported that they really enjoyed working with the facilitators, and they kept them honest, and that they were they made sure they kept moving forward, and they stayed on task, and they did what they could do to make sure people kept attempting these connections. And nothing but high praise for the facilitators. Everybody felt connected to the facilitators and really appreciated all that support. And they appreciated all the tools that Pathways had given them. So the interest surveys, ongoing meetings and discussions, the toolkits, those kinds of things. One of the things that they did report working was the use of technology, and part of that's probably COVID related. But at the beginning of Pathways, we were very hesitant about technology in general and making sure we didn't overuse technology to make connections. But COVID, we've learned through COVID that it can be a useful tool. Friendship is now part of job descriptions, or at least entry level. It's not worked its way completely up through the chain of command, but at least it's part of job descriptions in many providers. Some providers have hired their own community connectors, and staff themselves are actually enjoying a lot of the activities as well. So that's one of the things we've learned, is that if you have staff that wants to try something, it might work better for the participant. And we also, a couple of providers also wanted to comment about the Florence Finkel Fund. If they hadn't had those additional funds, they might not have been able to participate in some activities. So having that extra funding was very helpful. Some of the barriers. So we tried to say, let's not talk about COVID. Let's talk about what else were barriers, because we all know COVID was a barrier, but we just couldn't avoid it. COVID was a barrier. It came in the middle of this project. It was a challenge for everybody. But moving forward, what we have found and what people reported is that one of the things that COVID did was kind of maybe set us back a little bit in terms of we're less willing to take risks and putting us more in that caretaker role and trying to protect people. We were worried if we send them out in the community and they get, they're exposed to the virus, what could happen? So there's a little bit of reduction in risk there, which we'd worked so hard to get over. In some instances, engagement is still limited. So people might attend activities and meet people, but still not going to the next step, still not making that real connection. There's, again, staff shortages, not just, related to Pathways projects, but just on every step of the way. Some some, providers reported that, they would try to reach out to find activities in community groups, and that some places are just still not physically accessible. There's, you might find an art class somewhere, but it's in a little art studio and you can't get there. So that's still happening. And then the licensure and certification, again, with COVID, relationships are just still not a priority on that end. So there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, is that the word, between DDS and what, one hand really pushing pathways, and another hand, relationships are not the top priority on that piece. So just to wrap up quickly, what providers would like to see going forward, the regional inclusion networks. So, maintaining those connections to people and having people they can bounce ideas off and work with. Ideas about how they continue to do this in their context of their regular work. How do we continue to make time for this going forward? Ongoing tools, right? Like how, please share more tools with their providers, anything Pathways can share, and the tools that they can now take from the participants that were part of Pathways and start to use with other people they support in their programs. And training. How do they maintain training for their own staff? How do they make sure that, all the new hires are in the loop and that culture has been changed and that it's always talked about and that everybody stays up to date on how to do this and is reminded about it? And in particular, several of the providers mentioned the invitation to engagement training, that was one of their favorites and felt was the most useful for them in training staff. So finally, just with this quote, but it's hard work and you need people committed to doing it. But with this project, it's a perfect example of what can happen when you have the resources to pull it off. So that's it. Thank you. Pat, is this going back to Katie or?
Yes, thank you, Christine. Such a great summary and really some themes that I think we can all connect to. I know, I speak for the facilitator team when we really had the opportunity to see the creativity and people continuing to shift to that mindset of connections, even despite some of the barriers and maybe not being able to physically access the community. People still, we're brainstorming, how can we support connections? How can we support interest in lives and full of meaningful relationships for the people we support? So despite all the odds, I know each month we were all deeply inspired by, the commitment and the ongoing discussions and strategies that were implemented. Now, at this point in our program, I am filled with excitement and I share in everyone's anticipation to hear from our keynote speaker. When we set out to plan today's conference, we thought, whom could we invite to share and celebrate in all of our efforts of connecting people in community? Who would embrace the stories of friendship and value person-centered strategies to build community that encompasses the very fabric of this work? Beth Mount was our North Star in our search for our keynote, and we are overjoyed to have her presence and wisdom with us in our time together today. Beth Mount has worked for more than 40 years toward the ideal that every person with a disability can be a valued member of community life. Beth is regarded as the international expert in the creative art of person-centered planning. Throughout the course of her professional and personal life, Beth has been deeply involved in strengthening community and building capacity for inclusion through her art, creativity, and leadership. It is with great pleasure we welcome Beth Mount.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having me in this conversation and reflection this morning. Just being a part of preparing for this has given me the opportunity to listen in on so many of your stories. And I would like to use my keynote time to just simply be a segue between the promise of relationship building and the potential for belonging and real connection that is the one factor that changes the heart and opens the heart in ways that almost nothing else we invest in does. And as I begin this talk, I want to just say, Elin, I'm looking at you. You're on my screen. And I can't say enough about the power of the collective in the state of Massachusetts. And there are many of you who have been critical players and actors way beyond the 10 years that this project, that this celebration lifts up. But the leadership, the role of leadership in these initiatives, both at the deputy director level and also Leo at the level of a statewide organization, there is nothing like this, to my awareness, in the world. There is no other example of leaders putting relationship building at the center of all the policy. Now, I know, Elin, it wasn't all the policy, but much of the policy. And Leo, I know it's not all that the ARC is up to, but whatever all your other competing commitments have been, you have kept this at the center of people's awareness and attention, and you have found even small, sometimes big ways to cultivate and fertilize and underwrite the passion of the people, many who are in this call today, to just keep on keeping on, right? And a big part of why we can celebrate the richness of these relationships and what's happening in Massachusetts is because of this collective cultivation, this collective intention to make and keep the heart of the work connecting people in love, right? In care and concern and qualities that we will never be able to measure in spite of how good our research tools are, right? These are the unspoken aspects of what we do, what you've done. And I will say beyond a shadow of a doubt, having listened to the videos, read your stories, that it is this energy, it is the qualities that you've cultivated that are part of a renewal of our communities, a part of a renewal of society, if you will. And now, as Leo said, now more than ever, this is what we need. So I hope you will use this time to reflect and to notice where you feel the power to keep going, to act, to take the next step, and also where you hear practices that you know have been of real value, of real that really make a difference, because this work, I don't know of another group of people, another collective like this, that has invested in and curated the practices that are now part of what you engage in together. And so I hope this is just a transition from the last 40 years, the last 10 years, and the next 10 years, and the next 40 years of keeping this important work alive. So that said, I did want to share a little bit more about some of the things that have made an impression on me as I've listened to your stories and studied the power of your work. Is that showing up for people? Can you see that okay? All right, great. So yes, we're celebrating connections, and I think it's very powerful that this image of a tree, right, with these hands reaching out, this was the logo for this initiative. And when we listen to the stories that you've curated, there are about 50 of them in both the handbooks and the manuals that Leo mentioned, and also the videos, which you'll have a chance to listen to a number of them today. each one is more delicious than the other, right? They are such a treasure trove of power, of just immense power between people. And it's the kind of power that we can only feel and see and sense through a story and through listening to the people who are bringing these stories alive. And what we become aware of as clearly as ever, and I know we'll start with this shortly, Jonathan is in this group, and Joy. Jonathan and Joy's relationship is 30 years, right? Part of the power of many of these stories is these are not just outcome stories, right? These are long lasting relationships that have been cultivated with care and concern and attention. And we have so much to learn from that. So we are listening for both the power of these stories, what touches us, and also what are the practices that you have cultivated. And one thing that I am really impressed with in this group in general is I appreciate how much you all will set off on a certain direction, but because of your practice of reflection, you'll let something go, right? Because it's not really working. And so that's been hugely important. You've cultivated these practices and you're taking them to a whole nother level. And so this time together, these 2 hours, give us a chance to reflect upon the power and the practice of relationship building throughout Massachusetts and beyond. And I say beyond because I know in my experience working throughout America and really in the world, I would love nothing more than to collect up the richness of this initiative and have this be known across all of these service environments. Because honestly, there's so many places that talk about relationship building. It's all over the place, right? But there's very little real power, real practice, and real investment in bringing these possibilities to life. And so I look forward to what emerges from today and how you continue. So we've already mentioned, and it's very important to say, that this is a time of real challenge. And this is a symbol, actually, it comes to me from Jack Yates. Jack, I appreciate this so much. You helped me see that Corona had more meaning than just the coronavirus. It is this fine light that continues to shine in an eclipse, that even in this darkest moment, when it seems that all light is maybe faded or hiding from us, we see this light, we can find this light. And in many ways, one of the things that's very significant about this initiative is that that this period of time with the virus has actually heightened what we know is working, right? So you all have watched a lot of things fall apart, like activities and things that gave us a sense that people were included, but actually didn't necessarily hold up when the going got as tough and the darkness became as challenging as it's been for us all. And so you will have a chance to hear really wonderful stories of things that people have done during the Corona time, right? That have been that are incredibly uplifting. And it reminds us also of the power of the one-to-one relationship, the heart-to-heart relationship that has sustained people and thrived during this time. It's important, of course, to say that right now there are many reasons to feel and connect to this sense of death, right? It's the coronavirus. We've lost 1 million people. Gun violence is just tearing us up inside, tearing our communities, our schools, our hearts apart. There is, of course, the ongoing racial injustice and income inequality, the war in Ukraine, environmental disaster, climate change. There's so many reasons that darkness can feel more powerful than what you're doing here. And yet, this is what you're doing here. You're saying, what is my story? What is my part? And how do I make a difference in the face of what can feel so overwhelming? And I really treasure this quote by Joan Halifax, because it just reminds me, as I listen to your stories, I felt like each one of these stories is its own light. She reminds us that each of us has to shine a light into our own corner, be it a small corner or a large one. We cannot be driven mad by suffering. We have to do whatever we can to transform our fear and sadness over our lack of agency. We have to do whatever we can to sow the seeds of peace in our world. And so we turn toward love and wisdom, hoping that we can shine some light into our small corners, and perhaps others might join us in their way. And so each of your stories is one of these lights. And together, I have been reminded of the great teaching and the great gifts of Judith Snow, who some of you may have known during her lifetime, and others, whether you realize it or not, you're walking in her legacy. This is a photograph of Judith and one of her friends, Diamond Harges, at the Toronto Summer Institute. Judith is the originator of Circles of Support, originally the Joshua Committee, when she brought people together to support her to move out of a nursing home. And Judith, there are so many great gifts that Judith brought us into the world before her passing in 2015. But I love this picture in particular because Judith called us forth to see the gift in every single person, right? Leo was making this point. As you move forward, you do not want to leave anyone out of the possibility of a true friendship, the possibility of a real relationship. And Diamond, Judith's friend here, is a great artist of social change, working with the principles of asset-based community development, which is just a kind of fancy word for what you've been practicing, which is finding the places, finding the spaces, finding the friends, finding the people where gifts are needed and gifts can be strengthened and lifted up. And so the two of them together, I feel like they kind of hold this mask that they're holding is an art effort that they made to support people to make a symbol of their highest potential. And what they both have to remind us of is that one cannot live into a highest potential without both finding the gift, recognizing and valuing the gifts of every person, and finding the place and the people who support and strengthen the gift. And here we have this lovely circle that Judith brought into our world and into our planet as an image of so much of the work that you all are doing. A reminder that the highest potential is strengthened and emerges as we build relationships and support people to live into valued social roles. And so Judith reminds us that anything that creates an opportunity for people to listen in and appreciate the gifts of one other person is that's the power of gifts. And if we learn to listen to gifts, we discover them. And so a hugely important element of this initiative over time is the capacity that you've developed together to listen to gifts, to discover them together. And Judith's call to us is that meaningful interactions that are the result of this work become the connective tissue of a healthy society. That this is not just for disabled people, this is for everyone. That this is, as Leo said, this is central to the quality of life of all of us. And yet, what is it that we find, and where do we find our place in building and strengthening both the gift and also the belief, the power that our work is sustaining and strengthening a world that wants to be born in our communities. And so this is another one of Judith's teachings. Sustained, vibrant relationship demands that the person with a disability be viewed with a different vision and be listened to with a different ear. I think of that as the eyes of the heart. So as you listen to each of these stories, listen with the eyes of the heart. Foremost of these alternative possibilities is to see and hear the person as a welcome traveler. We must see our life journey as one of transforming human suffering by creating the supportive relationships we all need to sustain life and to celebrate together life's joys, victories, and surprises. And so what we have a chance to understand in the state of Massachusetts is what has it looked like, and Leo has already talked about this, and I've already mentioned the power of Elin Howe and other, and so many of you who've been a part of cultivating collective action, that we cannot make relationships happen, right? We are more like gardeners. We are more like artists and healers and fabricators, stitchers. We give ourselves through collective action. That's the power and the practice. But our organizations and people in authority can have a great influence on our capacity to show up and give our attention and our awareness to these important possibilities. And I want to just mention, Elin, I'm reminded going back here probably 7 or 8 years ago when you came to a direct support conference at Seacrest, and some direct support workers had the courage to challenge you in a public meeting to say, I hear you saying develop relationships, but honestly, where I work, there are so many things that we're up against that are in the way of developing relationships. Everything from fingerprinting people to who knows what else. So many things that direct support staff felt like were stopping them from taking the next step. And this is just an example of powerful leadership, collective action, and listening. So as the state director, Elin stopped everything, turned on a dime, went to lunch with that group of people and said, tell me more. And out of that conversation came creating our Commonwealth, a 3-year initiative, right? That was funded well. Larry Tumino had a part, so many of you. But that was an example of saying, all right, this is not just about using the words and sounding good at the podium, but really turning on a dime and saying, how do we give more energy and attention toward these ideals? Because we really do believe in them. And so on this note, I'm going to turn to ask you now, as you listen to these stories, to explore what is your part. And I am offering a window to you for listening. And Katie is going to, after today, we're going to collect the observations, the reflections, and the wisdom that you notice as you listen to these stories. I've been sharing some of what I've noticed and what I've become aware of. And I'm going to even invite you, by the way, to draw a window on your page just 4 squares, and see as things arrive for you, insight, a sense of what more is possible, a practice. Just give yourself a place to write it down, because it may be really important that you're noticing that more clearly right now. So here are just a few that I've noticed in listening to your stories, and we'll have a chance to hear a lot more about this. One of the powers of the work include the ways that people with disabilities are showing up in this conversation, that we've got the Friends Matter group and the advocates standing strong that are taking an important leadership role. Families, of course, families have always been at the forefront of holding their families and the cares and concerns of individuals together. But what's so important about this initiative is that there are countless other associations that are also providing additional strength and power and support to both people with disabilities and families. And so that is everything from citizen advocacy, which has been thriving, well, sometimes maybe struggling, but alive in Massachusetts for more than 35 years. Best Buddies, the YMCA, you'll hear more about all of these. And of course, provider organizations. And one of the observations, one of the findings for me is noticing how all of these stakeholders are being supported through your networks to help each other, to reach across what is often a separated place of trying to make a difference, to come together, to do what you can, to strengthen doing what you can with what you have, where you are, but to also ask for help, to reach and look beyond your own group, your own location, your own situation, to ask for help. We're going to hear some themes in practice. They include, but I hope you will notice even more in a more detailed, nuanced way. Well, what is it about that person-centered planning that made the difference? There's a hugely important body of work that you've developed here around the invitation. And I know I wrote down, gee, I want to know more about the invitation to engagement. This is something that you all have really worked to cultivate, right? I think that's vitally important. And we'll hear a lot more about that. There are wonderful examples of creative collective action, whether it's at the level of a family. You're going to hear about a doggy daycare coming out of nowhere. That's what I call creative collective action. But also the YMCA finding a way to make a difference and change the way they do their work across the state. And finally, there are the efforts that organizations are making to change and to find more space for doing this work. And so I will finish now. As you listen to these stories, I want to invite you to notice what touches you. Where do you feel your growing edge? What wants to grow with your help? And what is a seed of the future that you want to cultivate? And we'll come back to these questions toward the end of our time together.
Thank you so much, Beth. You have provided us such thoughtful insight as we start to move forward into deeply exploring some of those themes that you discussed by sharing stories of our work. So this past year, the Widen in the Circle program invested more opportunity to dig into the practices of person-centered planning. We have been so fortunate to have the expert facilitation advice and how-tos from Jack Yates. Jack is a pioneer in this practice, and many of us have been provided the opportunity to learn directly through Jack's Train the Trainer sessions. And now we all have the ability to utilize this gift and implement these best practices. At this time, I welcome Jack to share more with us the value of person-centered planning while building relationships.
Thanks. So person-centered planning, I guess people could see that just as a mindset, which is true. And yet it's also tremendously valuable, at least when we can, once in a while, informally, on the edges or even outside the system itself, to have a band of people to be able to sit down together or on Zoom. To my surprise, it worked pretty much just as well on Zoom, and really stop and think, and really think way into the future, and to ask not the question, what's a constructive activity on Tuesday, but to ask the question, who might this person become? So what we'll do now is share a short film, and you'll hear from me. My job was the conductor, you might say, as in an orchestra. And then to hear, though, also from Brooke and Sarah's mom, because Brooke and Sarah were connected with me through Lisa Drennan, who's in our call now too. And she kind of brokered that and was a coach for Sarah and Brooke to be able to be full participants in this series of sessions. And so we imagined who might they become. Go ahead. Different film. Got it.
Brooke and Sarah are very energetic, very social, very engaging young ladies, very involved in the community, very inquisitive. There's so much to them. And so when we got to the adult age, we selected Cardinal Cushing's adult program, which work hard to get them in the community and fulfill their goals. But again, that can only go so far. It only goes so far because it's you know, how much the community will engage these individuals and give them those opportunities. So so I've always been very happy with Cardinal Cushing, but I needed more for them. I just needed more for them. And it was my job to say, okay, what does the future look like for Brooke and Sarah? Especially, I've always, even before adult age, have known about this connection they've had with animals, a really uncanny connection. Not January of 2020, not COVID related, just said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I am gonna start a doggy daycare for them. And I sent out a letter. Jack knows this story. It started with a letter. I just drafted this letter to family, friends, everybody in my address book, and just said, it was a beautiful picture of me, the girls, our two dogs, our two cats at the time. And we were sitting on the couch. It was a Christmas photo. And I said, you know, to all my friends and family, we are going to do this. We are going to start a doggy daycare. And
it's an unusual situation in person-centered planning to start that focused already. Here's what we want to do. So right. Deb invited me to be the facilitator, or I like to call it conductor, actually.
Okay.
With an orchestra, right? Is that all the people who know Brooke and Sarah well, family, friends of the family, extended family, workers in the day program, workers who know them in other ways. And these people will be the ones who make the music. But the conductor still is not totally useless, that she or he will kind of set the tempo. And sometimes they'll give a cue. We'd like to hear from you, right? So what would we look at in this situation where Brooke and Sarah and Deb, their mom, had a very good idea that they were very agreed that that's the direction they wanted to go in. One question I asked everybody to talk about for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes was, what gift does Sarah bring to our world? And then what gift does Brooke bring to our world on that? Then we asked, what is Brooke's calling? If there is such a thing, that somebody is destined to be a certain person or a certain kind of person, then who is that? What is Brooke's calling? And then what is Sarah's calling? And the answers were not surprising, and they had to do with with caring for animals and really love for animals, but also for the animals' owners. Okay? And yet I think it was still worth asking, because everybody then who was in this planning process together, including some human service folks, but family, friends of the family, is really kind of deepening this. Oh, this is not just an interest. Yeah, this could be like a calling in life, couldn't it? It's not a question we usually ask about people with disabilities, but we did. And so we had to get to the how. So among Sarah and Brooke, the two principals in the business, what would be their division of labor? Would there be something a little more concentrated here or there? Would it be equal? Also, there would be someone that DDS through the ARC would be able to have a part-time support worker to help get this rolling, right? And then, other things in the how that people thought, well, there's going to have to be somebody who would train them. I mean, they have a natural, beautiful way with dogs, but somebody, a professional dog trainer to do. So all the little tactical details, you might say, and getting a number of people who know and care about Brooke and Sarah to make proposals, possibilities, suggestions, or to weigh in on that really enriched the kind of planning that could go into it.
I personally felt the person-centered planning process was so critical for me to hear what other people saw within my daughters, within us, within our idea. If it was validation, it was a big validation for me. When I heard from other people these gifts that they saw, even though I kind of knew those gifts were there, but now that other people saw those gifts, I needed to capitalize on that more, and not only that, but my girls, they said a lot of things during this person-centered planning that I didn't even think to ask them, because I was on my mission. And my mission was to create this business for them. But I almost forgot what other things were important to them. Not just, I will never forget what Brooke said when they were asked what's important from this person, the support person. And Brooke said for them not to give up. And I still get a little choked up over that, because she, and I didn't know this, she was very aware of how support people come and go. That was one of the first things that came out of her mouth. Stick with it and not give up. And it was like, wow. It was just wow, because that was important to her. I wouldn't have known that unless we had the person-centered planning. So it sculpted the road I took, some of the roads I took, and some of the things I did. So that's why the person-centered planning, I really hone in on when I'm talking to parents, that if you have the opportunity, regardless if you already have the idea, it's going to help you pave the way. And the person-centered planning was, for me, one of the easiest processes because of Jack. So if you have a conductor or a facilitator, they do all the work. They just ask me, who do you want to invite? Who are the people in Brooke and Sarah's life that you think that they would benefit from, the girls would benefit from having a part of this process? There's this whole new group of people that they were honored to be a part of this, I think, and they want to see it through and they want to see it successful.
You got all of the participants who are invested in this plan. They're going to try to make their own plan come true, say, because they were part of it.
I finally got a sense of relief from the person-centered planning that, whew, I'm not alone. All these people around the girls see them just like I do, and see what they offer the world, I think. And so many of the decisions that I made and so much of where we are at right now is stemmed from that person-centered planning process that we had.
It was within a few months, the business started and has been very successful.
But we have 17 customers. We do have a wait list. Every single time we do a post, I get 2 messages from, on Facebook. Oh, wow. Do you have any availability? We've been called the best daycare in town. All of our customers are in the community, and so, when we're out in the community, whether it be we go to the hardware store or we go to CVS, we're always seeing our customers, and they're always, it's not just a hello, it's my girls will stop and say, oh, so where is Buddy? Oh, well, he's at home. And, oh, how's he doing? We'll see. Is he coming Tuesday? Yeah, we'll see him on Tuesday. So they're really connected to the people within the community and also the businesses. We try to give back as a small business. Instead of going to Lowe's or Home Depot, I go to the local Dewhurst Lumber. Dewhurst, we have their dog. So we buy our supplies from them, and he in turn brings his dog here. This is what community looks like, and this is how we support each other, and it's a give and take. It's so wonderful, like what we've done. It's better than I have ever imagined that it was going to be. We have hit all of our goals and have exceeded. When I say goals, I'm not talking financial goals. I'm talking girls' goals. I'm talking the well-being.
So person-centered planning. There are some states that were very clever, and they said, all the planning we do that's required by courts and by state commissioners is person-centered planning. Well, but that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the ways that a person, a family, a devoted staff member or manager could say, let's just gather the people who care the most, and some people who will be able to think outside the box, maybe some community members, some friends of the family who've never been asked, what do you think about Brooke or Sarah's future, right? And to gather them together and just to think it through out loud together. And so sometimes that really has paid off. And we don't always have a film about it, and they're not always such beautiful twins that we can put in the film. But I would say of the hundreds of times I've been involved over the years, usually invited by families, that it's always been worthwhile. It's always thought of some things collectively, cultivating, as Beth said, that any one smartest person in the equation wouldn't have thought of without thinking it through together. So we're starting through pathways and trying as one more way to sort of keep recruiting one-to-one, not advertising in a flyer, but recruiting one-to-one. Hey, could this be helpful? Could this be worthwhile for you or for your family? So that's something that's become, part of Pathways after it was pioneered 40 years ago. John O'Brien is on the call, and Beth Mount and some others, but it's something that we've tried to build in as a possibility. It's kind of a big production, yes, but it's always, as Deb, Brooke and Sarah's mom, said, that, wow, to get all these people invested in the plan, that's not just collaborating on conversation. That's collaborating on making a different world for this person 5 and 10 years down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Jack. Wonderful examples there, and the real power of relationships through that person-centered plan and practices just illustrated there. Now, self-advocates have always been an integral part of Widen the Circle's training and outreach. However, this year we have been so fortunate to have several self-advocates take charge and organize even more opportunities to educate and raise awareness for the importance of freely given friendships for all. At this time, I would like to welcome Jonathan Spiller, Norma Laureano, and Rachel Hayward to share a bit more about the extraordinary resources that they have developed.
Thanks, Katie. So I've been incredibly fortunate this past year to be able to work with our amazing self-advocate presenter team. And you're going to hear from them in just a minute, but I just want to tell you a little bit of the work that they've been doing. So over this past year, they developed and presented a brand new training for and by self-advocates on how to build and maintain friendships. And they also created a train the trainer version of this, which is now on our Pathways to Friendship website so that more people can access this amazing material. And they have been so incredibly professional and also prolific with their presentations. We've been going to conferences, self-advocacy groups, peer support groups, regional trainings and classes, and they've spoken to a wide variety of audiences, including people obviously receiving services, but also direct support professionals and even middle school students. We've all incredibly benefited from their just vast amount of knowledge and personal experience and just lived experience know-how, and from their generosity of just sharing their stories with us. And I just want to put a pitch out there that they are still doing many presentations now. So if any of you are interested in having them come to your organizations and present either to you, to staff, to families, to other people receiving services, I know that they would love to go ahead and do that. So for now, I just want to pass it over to two of our amazing presenters, Jonathan and Norma. I'm going to start off with Jonathan and just ask them to share about what it's been like, this experience about being involved in Pathways to Friendship as presenters. So Jonathan, would you mind starting us off?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Spiller, and I'm a self-advocate with the ARC in Massachusetts. I've been enjoying this experience a lot. I've been enjoying teaching not only self-advocates from different chapters of Mass Advocates Standing Strong about how to make and grow friendships. But on May 9th, I got the opportunity to talk to two 6th grade classes. It was virtual on Google Meetup, and Rachel Hayward's daughter was in the 2nd class, and other kids were very interested. I talked to them about what my disabilities are and how they affect my life. And Rachel Hayward asked me questions such as how my disabilities have also improved, how they improve my life. Well, my disabilities, they have given me more motivation to don't give up and things that make me happy in my life, like self-advocacy. I also, on March 21st, me and Rachel, one-on-one, we gave a presentation to college students training to be support staff from a community college that's in Worcester. It was a very kind professor, and I stay in touch with him by email. And I'm looking forward to doing more presentations. I have one coming up with Meg and Phoebe, June 22nd. As soon as Meg emailed me, I replied to her back right away. I said, I definitely want to read some PowerPoint slides. And that's it's for some college students that get in a certificate in human resources. And I definitely want to do more, talk to more schools. I hope eventually in person, more middle schools and more colleges getting certificates in human resources and training to be support staff. Thank you, Katie Driscoll, for giving me this opportunity. Rachel Hayward, Meg, and thank you to Norma, the other self-advocate. We've been working on a team on different presentations, and it's been a wonderful experience. Norma is a very kind. Norma is very kind. She's a great self-advocate. We work well as a team. Meg and Rachel Hayward, they've been helping us. We practice every Monday. And thank you to Rio as well. I begin in April, me and Rachel, we got the opportunity to do, we were on Real Live and they played the video of me and Joy, my friend Joy. We've been friends for 30 years and I think Rachel's gonna play it so everyone on this call can watch about me and my friend Joy. We talk about our friendship and how much it is important to both of our lives.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. And now, Norma, if you can unmute yourself. And if you don't mind just introducing yourself to everyone.
Hi, my name is Norma Loviano, and I also a self-advocacy for standing strong. And I also would like to do some more presentations too. And I want to thank Rachel and Meg and Kay and all of you for having me speak and all that stuff. And Meg too. I would like to thank her for helping me speak. We practice every Monday. I practice every Mondays doing this. And I'm also wanted to have a job as a host there, but they don't have any openings yet. But as soon they have host for South Africa, they have any openings, I will apply. I will put a job application for it.
And Norma, what have you learned about friendship through this experience?
I learned about friendship because I like to I help people make friends, and also I learned something for kids in middle school for social disability in school, how you became such a disability and all that.
Yeah. And do you think friendship's important to work on?
Yes, I believe that friendship is good. Yes.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much, Norma, for sharing.
You're welcome.
So I just want to say one more thing. Another area where we have had more self-advocate involvement this past year is in the making of our short friendship videos. We created a series of 6 short videos, about 3 minutes long each, which feature a friendship pair, one person with a disability, one without. And these videos really highlight the beauty and mutuality of these relationships. And I just want to thank the wonderful, generous friendship pairs who so graciously, were open with their stories for everyone to see. I'm going to show you one of them today. All of them are on our Pathways to Friendship website, so you can see it there. But I am going to show you the one about Jonathan and Joy. Jonathan, do you want to just give a really, really quick intro to this video before I play it?
In this video, me and my friend Joy talk about our friendship and how much it is important for in both of our lives.
Great, thank you.
Me and Joy met in the third grade at Glenwood Elementary School.
Because I was new and I didn't know anyone, and I was looking for someone who I thought was going to be kind and easy to talk to and get along with. And that's Jonathan. He's just a good, friendly person.
Joy moved to North Reading at the end of 5th grade. 4 or 5 years we lost touch. I never gave up searching for her. I worked on the white pages on the website. And finally, I found her mother's number. I called her one day, and her mother was surprised when I said, "This is Jonathan Spiller, and please tell Joy that I called." She was very happy to give Joy the message, and then Joy called me and we got back in touch.
Yeah, I remember when my mom said to me, she goes, "Guess who called you today?" And when she said Jonathan Spiller, I was blown away. I wasn't expecting that answer. And I was so happy that you reached out, and we've been in touch ever since. We talk probably every day now. We do try to get together for lunch when we can. I feel like more often than not, we just get to chat about our everyday lives. And, you know, we always fill each other in when something happens, or if we're worried about something or stressed about something, or if we're happy and excited about something. And just the most important thing to him is that we maintain a good friendship, which is very important to me.
Sometimes I have hard days, and Joy gives me advice about different things. She gives me encouragement. Her friendship is a very important part of my life.
I think that it's really rare that you have a friendship that's, you know, 30 years long, and the fact that we've never had a fight, and we've only ever been supportive to each other, and we even had that long gap of not talking with each other, and we were able to pick up where we left off. It's a true friendship, where we really cherish each other for who we are. It's important to always be able to have that person to be able to go to, who you know will always be positive and have your back and support you and bring you up.
This friendship will keep on growing and growing for many more years.
All right, thank you. Let's give it back to Katie.
Thank you so much for sharing the friendship story and everything that you've been up to as far as training and your outreach. And there just is so much potential for you to reach and educate so many people through the trainings you've developed, your stories. So really, I know everybody was so gracious, but we really have to thank you, again and again, and just thank you for all of the changes that your voices are leading and really demonstrating by really highlighting the importance of friendship. So thank you, Jonathan, Norma, and other self-advocates that present and share these stories as well. We are all enriched because of your contributions and personal stories. So thank you. Now, in our efforts to build community inclusion, as we continue to work together as providers, as staff, as families, as self-advocates, we really also must look to build community partnerships, and we have to reach into community. Now, Pathway's fifth and most recently published toolkit on building friendships, which was authored by Lisa Drennan of Merge, I know Lisa's here today. This was focused on community organizations and its members as the primary audience. And as we've been doing outreach with these toolkits and trainings to build that community capacity for inclusion, we have been met with people and leaders in community who want to build these bridges together. We now have a short video which highlights the efforts of the Old Colony YMCA in their journey towards support and inclusion.
Back as my younger days, I was a program director at Stoughton. And in Stoughton, as much power as I had, there was a lot of programs that I was running that was very intentional to be very fun focused, but it was not intentional to be inclusive or engaging to all. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was 23 years old. I was really just excited to get a league started that had tons of kids in basketball and things like that. And time again, the first day I would have a skills clinic. And what that basically means is that everyone travels around, and I would have music blaring. I would have things decorated in the hallway. It was just, looking back, hindsight, sensory overload, right? But every first day I would realize that I had about 5 to 10 kids that would drop out of the program. And I was never sure why. I could never understand why am I keep getting kids that are dropping out? This program, if I say so myself, is pretty awesome, right? And I started doing some research and asking them, what is happening? Is there something that I did or something that the Y did? And I remember one mom in particular just said to me, it was just too much for us. It was sensory overload, and my child is not used to that. And we would actually appreciate it if we had a heads up that this was the expectation that we were walking into. And so that really just did not sit well with me, didn't sit well with me at all. I lost sleep for a couple nights because I felt like I was just not understanding the community. I was not understanding what people needed. I began speaking to one person in particular. Her name is Denise Cave. She actually started Top Soccer in East Bridgewater. And we started connecting on, how can we service just not one type of child, but all children, and become a little bit more inclusive for what we were doing. I luckily was able to be promoted to associate exec in East Bridgewater. And when I got there, I was really inclined and passionate about starting something that was a little bit more inclusive. And what you're going to hear from me is I keep saying the word inclusion, but what I created was not an inclusive program, but we'll get to that. But I really wanted some inclusion program. I thought that was going to be the goal, and that was going to tell parents that why I was there for them. And what I started to do was just meet with Denise week by week. And every single week there ended up being more and more and more people that she brought along. Before I knew it, I had some sort of community advisory committee that was created right in front of my eyes. We ended up doing some research and looking at inclusive names all around the world. But in the Y of Australia, they actually had an inclusive program called Y-ability. And it just really spoke to us, really spoke to Denise. And I said, let's see if we can start that. Let's see if we can create an umbrella of what called Y-ability, and then create programs underneath it. And so we came up with 3 different programs: Swimability, Fitability, and Drums Alive. And we wanted to run those for the East Bridgewater community. And luckily, we found a grant for $16,000 that we wrote for from DDS that was able to provide us with a pilot program for Y-ability. So as soon as we were able to be awarded that money, we actually opened up our registration with the help of the committee of being able to have videos, being able to see what you were signing up for. I mean, everything that I did wrong in Stoughton, we did right in East Bridgewater. And of course, the YMCA's luck at the time is that I opened this up on a blizzard, right? Because of course, open house would be on a blizzard. And I was so disappointed. I said, no one's gonna show up, but I'm still gonna host it. When I tell you, we filled up all 3 classes that first weekend, and not only filled it up, but we had parents that just came with their children and were so prepared with paperwork. And I immediately called my exec and said, I don't know what we did, but we're onto something. And the community is telling us that they need these programs and they want these programs. Before I knew it, I had 40 individuals signed up like that. And saw a lot of success. We saw a lot of smiles and a lot of greatness, but then we started to see some hurdles that we put in our own way, right? So the first hurdle was staffing. How do we maintain this? How do we keep this going? It's grant funded. That's going to be a huge hurdle. How do we have institutional knowledge? How do we train our staff? That was another hurdle that we saw. Member hurdles. We have a community that is sometimes not so inclusive or wants to be inclusive or wants to understand somebody different. And so that was a hurdle. Spacing. Trying to find a location to host these programs, these sub-separate programs, these specialized programs I actually created that at the time I thought were inclusive, but these sub-separate programs that we created. We then had relationship building hurdles, staffing hurdles, people not wanting to make the connections or treat people like they are. And so what we quickly realized is that, oops, we need to get some other professionals in the room. We need to get some other people in the room. And we can't be limited by our programs. We felt really limited by our programs, right? And so what Sarah and I did, and really mastermind is Sarah, she said, I think it would be really important to get all of the community advisory committees together. And so by the time that Sarah returned, I was shouting Y-ability from the rooftops. I presented at board meetings. People started creating their own programs and community advisory committees naturally and organically across our Y. And all of a sudden we had over 100 kids that signed up. We had over 100 people on our community advisory committees, and we were sailing. And so we said, let's get these people together and let's create a summit. And so we created a summit. We had every individual in a room that Sarah put together, just a fantastic day for everybody. And we shared, we connected, we talked about positives and negatives at each branch, about the programs, about being more inclusive, and what does that look like, the journey to inclusion. And that's when Sarah and I first started realizing not only did we create a hurdle in ourselves by specialized programs, but we did not create that institutional knowledge that anybody in our YMCA could pick up that program and apply it somewhere else.
One of the most unfortunate parts of COVID is the staffing crisis, and the fact that so much institutional knowledge was lost. Roman did a wonderful thing starting these separate programs, and we don't want to, that was our first step. That was the first phase in our journey, and it is, why we're where we are today. But when we created programming and then we lost program staff, we realized very quickly that it needed to be a full culture shift. It needed to live with everyone. It needed to be sustainable. And it needed to go far beyond, oh, we have a program for you. It meets at Monday at 3 p.m. And if you want Tuesdays, you have to drive down to Plymouth or something like that. We felt limited saying that. And with limited staffing, it only became more limiting. So we sort of came back. We sat in a meeting just like this, and we made wonderful connections, and we wanted to listen and just find out how we could do it better. First, we need to really agree on the definition of inclusion. We have to have some sort of common ground so that we're all having the same conversation. So we said, first, let's start with our frontline staff, because this is going to be really important. And we developed a inclusion training, just, really defining what is inclusion, what does it mean, what are some, lighthearted videos and ways of telling stories to get people there. And it was important to have our CEO talk about his commitment to inclusion, so that not only were we training our frontline staff, but we were connecting it all the way to the top. And the commitment that we saw every step of the way. We had to see what we were doing well and learn to recognize that. And we had to look around our branches and notice that there were individuals with disabilities organically being really successful, finding employment, instead of being known as the mayor of such and such a branch, why is that not just a commonplace thing? How do we make 20 of the person that, I'm referring to in the back of my head right now? And we know the group exercise class that always has such and such a person in the front row just being so successful. Why is that not every group exercise class? And what is it about that class that makes it successful? And so we started really asking ourselves those questions. Why are we allowing group homes to come and stay to themselves, and by nature of the way that they use our branches, make members upset because they're displacing space, right? If we have any group of people move around, and teenagers, right? Anyone, if there's a group of people taking up an area of our building on their own, it by nature makes the other people upset and resent them. And so by allowing that to happen in our branches, we're not creating a good culture. So I think we enforce the journey by making space for these conversations. When our CEO makes the board meeting agenda, he's been putting inclusion on it. I've spoken at 4 different board meetings in the last 5 months, I feel like, because it's commitment. Roman runs, our inclusion committee in our association. We said, I think diversity and inclusion is race, but it's so much more. Why are we not bringing this viability and inclusion work? That needs to be had around this table too. And so that conversation has started to spin off. So we're very much we feel that we're very much at the beginning.
A good idea, I should say, not a small idea, a great idea, right? Could really turn into something that transforms not only a branch, but an association. And if I knew back in late 2016 that one conversation I had with Denise Cave would turn into a culture shift at the Y, I would have pinched myself.
Thank you, Sarah and Roman of the Old Colony YMCA. Just really your insight, your openness, you demonstrate the possibilities of organizational change and how it can start from one idea, one conversation. And we just deeply value your commitment to inclusion, and we also value your community partnership. I know Sarah is with us today and would like to just say a quick word in addition to what they've shared in the video with us.
Thanks, Katie. First of all, we're just so honored to be part of this incredible day. So thank you for having us. We are so excited to be on this journey towards inclusion. We would be nothing without our community partners and those members and individuals helping us every step of the way. Since we came out of COVID, we've been really prioritizing getting our community advisory committees back up and running, and we've seen incredible support from people that don't have a lot of time to share. We've been really strategic about sort of who's on those committees and are really trying to make sure that we hear from every aspect of the inclusion communities. Like we said, we have commitment both from the front line all the way up to the CEO and all of our volunteer committees from the board level to the branch level and beyond. And we really are just getting started. So, we always feel very humbled when we're part of incredible days like this, that we get to be a part of it and we get to be around this table. But we are committed to serving all, and it makes so much sense for the Y to be a place where people meet lifelong friends. It happens every day here. And so to be more intentional and see it through different lenses and open our perspective with regards to what our role is in this process has been fulfilling and wonderful. And we can't wait to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We, again, such value in the work that you're doing and the openness to be on this journey together. So thank you. And now we are going to talk a little bit about one-to-one invitations. It was highlighted by Beth in the beginning. And one-to-one matchmaking, it has been a strategy for friendship that we've often highlighted in our training material over the years. But during the pandemic, we recognized more and more deeply the power of one-to-one invitations to relationship. This past year, we have increased our collaboration with North Quabbin Citizen Advocacy. And we are so very grateful for the current and former executive director, Nate Johnson and Tom Duty, for sharing their expertise in hosting matchmaking forums for community and providers over this past year, and many training opportunities on matchmaking and the training material that was highlighted as really valued by our providers, the Ask Invitation to Engagement. So we're so thankful to be able to collaborate on those experiences and continue those as we move into this next year. As a result of their experience in these networks that they've created, providers and community organizations are learning more about this approach and building their own matchmaking capacity. Phoebe Goodman will now share example of friendship through matchmaking and speak a bit more about this.
I'm just going to say a couple of words and then have Rachel share the video. We have Allison with us today. And Allison has been a part of Stonehill Best Buddies program for many, many years. And after graduating from Stonehill, maintained her friendship with her best buddy and has a real focus on that. And we've been lucky to have Allison as well as Erin, her colleague in the Southeast, join us in those matchmaking forums and have an opportunity to share what they've learned and learn from others like Nate and the other community members on the call who are doing this work. So I'm going to hand it over to Rachel to show the video and then over to Allison to share a couple of her thoughts after.
I met my freshman year of college. I joined Best Buddies. We got matched up, and I think we were matched up because we're both kind of quiet, and we were able to get each other in that way. And so we hung out just about every Friday, but we didn't just hang out during the Best Buddies hours. We started hanging out afterwards. And we've been friends ever since. It's been almost 9 years. You like hanging out with me?
Yeah. Do selfies.
Do selfies. We like doing selfies. We have some good pictures together.
Go bowling together.
We've been bowling together.
Christmas party.
Christmas party, yeah. That was fun too. We do talk a lot. How often? We FaceTime. We love having phone calls. You know, when I'm driving, I'll call Janina up. We'll talk for an hour. She'll keep me company. She's really thoughtful. She's really sweet. She always remembers little details. Like if it's my dad's knees bothering him or something, she'll ask for months how his knee's doing, right? I know I can count on her, right? If I'm having a bad day, she'll listen to me complain, or she'll make me laugh, or, you know, try and give me advice. You're funny. I'm funny. Yeah. I think we're funny together. I think that's what I like about us. Yeah. We can always have fun, and we're always making jokes. Yeah. You make me happy. You're a really good person, and I can't imagine not being friends with you. You know, I'm 5 years out of college now, and you're the person I talk to the most that I met during college. You know the most about what's going on in my life, and on an everyday basis, and you always care, and I don't know, I just always care about you. And we were best buddies, and we are great friends. Great friends.
So I want to invite Allison to unmute and share a little bit about her experience.
Hi, Phoebe and everybody. Thank you so much for having me a part of this and for having this. It's just been so wonderful. So I've been a part of Best Buddies for a while now, in high school and college, and I was thankful to continue my relationship with Janine, but I now work as a job coach at the House of Possibilities, and as part of that, I've been trying to make it a point to make sure that everybody realizes that these friendships can continue through past like the 4 years of college, or the time in the Best Buddies meetings themselves. So I'm really trying to promote that from the start, being like talking or hanging out, phone calls, FaceTime. I know Janine and I like to FaceTime a lot. We send each other pictures. She doesn't read, so just finding whatever ways to communicate is really important, especially through the pandemic. Everybody's been able to get creative, I think. But also, like specifically thinking for our population, like college students can do things like invite their buddies to come watch sports games on campuses, or go to their dorm room, really just getting creative and thinking of, when we think of Best Buddies as friends, just like anybody else, there are just so many more possibilities. I know for me, it was important that Janine and my family meet, and just as I would any other close friend. And I met her family as well, and our families actually became friends. And there's so much that can happen. So just in trying to think about a Best Buddies with a year 5, and that it doesn't end, and there's no reason for it to end. Those are valuable relationships, and even if it's not with your buddy, it can be with somebody that you met in Best Buddies, you know, to continue those. And so one thing that we're planning to do is a reunion for Best Buddies, to reconnect people with folks that maybe they don't talk to anymore, but there's no reason they can't, and just hopefully try and keep those friendships going. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I think it's so important, some of the messages that you share from your own experience. Best Buddies is way more than a program, and the opportunity to create sustainable relationships, and really encouraging people to think about that. How do you build this connection, this one-to-one match, into a relationship that can sustain all times, you know, after college, you know, beyond maybe the group activity, and really expand in that. And clearly you've demonstrated the benefits that it has in your own life and how much you value that relationship. I would like to give the opportunity to Nate, if you would like to share anything further about some of the matchmaking or the training opportunities that I know you have been facilitating as well. I know I gave a plug, but I'd like you to have the opportunity to plug further as well.
Yeah, well, I've been grateful to have the opportunity to do the Ask presentations with Tom, and there continues to be a call for those, so be on the lookout for further Ask presentations where we really go into the nuts and bolts of how to plan, how to support the match the best you can, and really the planning helps the natural nervousness of making the ask, which can be awkward for anyone. And I'm just really inspired to hear the different stories that people have, and I'm grateful to hear the stories that to share the stories that NQCA can provide. Like there's one of the most recent matches is a younger man who his mother told me because of the way his autism operates and what he focuses on, that the the best way to start the relationship would be through video games. So I matched him with a local citizen who's really well known on the local access TV, and they started out by talking about video games, but their friendship seems to be quickly blossoming. Last time I talked to the advocate in our follow along, he talked about how they were texting back and forth, and I didn't even realize the gentleman with the disability did text, so that was pretty great. And they've already been out to the movies a couple times, and I'm not good with dates, but I know we have a video coming up at the end of this month with me, Tom, and Andrew Oliver, a guy that started citizen advocacy in New York City, and hopefully gonna have a bit of a discussion around that. So if people are interested, reach out to me or Katie or Tom to learn more about that.
Yes, and that is on June 23rd. So thank you. And I believe it is 9:30 in the morning, June 23rd. So if you'd like to learn more friendship lessons from citizen advocacy, which focuses on one-to-one matchmaking, we'd love for you to tune in and learn more from these experts in matchmaking and building one-to-one companionships. A great example, Nate, just how even something such as video games, sometimes that connection can really, if deliberately put into place, cascade and take on a life of its own and build those relationships. So thank you so much for sharing. And we are so excited to do more together this year. There's so much possibilities in one-to-one matchmaking and support and relationship. Now, we'd like to talk a little bit about valued roles, something that we often reference in our Pathways to Friendship training and resources. Valued roles create an opportunity for a life of inclusion. A life of inclusion in valued roles lead to those pathways to friendship. Meg Gatos will now share an example of a good life full of relationships and valued roles.
Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everybody. I had the pleasure of meeting Samantha Gibbs of Reading, Mass. Recently, and she shared the very many valued social roles that she enjoys in her life and in her community there in Reading. As we watch this short video, I invite you to listen for Samantha's gifts and talents that she shares with others. As Beth Mount had mentioned to us this morning in her keynote remarks, if we listen for people's gifts, we discover them. And Samantha certainly has a lot. So let's watch the video, please, Rachel.
Samantha Gibbs. I am 20 years old and I'm a freshman in college. So at Salem State, I go to classes. Last semester, I took the Story of World Dance and an exercise class. I'm responsible for all my work and my belongings with an educational coach to help me with like taking notes and understanding my assignments, and so I can process more as well. Yeah, so at Salem State, I do the hair and makeup crew for the theater department. I work with old people. It's a nursing home. I do their makeup, play boggle, we play games. And I do their nails too. We sometimes we'll just have like a beauty day, or sometimes we'll just play games all day or something like that. It's so much fun.
From what I understand, when Sam goes in, they're like clamoring to be with her. Very bubbly and engaging, but you know, to do someone's hair and makeup, you know, some of these people don't have human touch. So that's very important to have human touch, and she's providing for them. So I think that that's a really important part of what she does there.
Yeah. I go out with my friends from school, and we sometimes go to like bowling. We'll go to the mall and get lunch or something like that. And it's fun, I love it. And I have learned now how to manage my money while going out with my friends. Oh yeah, we FaceTime. Sometimes we'll do like a Zoom call. We meet each other in between classes and have lunch together. It's all so much fun. Yeah, I also work too at Bun Ready Tavern, and it's so much fun. I've been a hostess there for 3 years now. At work, I hostess, I greet people, I sit people, I bus tables, and I roll cutlery. So every night when I go to work, I get dinner there, and it's so much fun, like getting my dinner, because I get to talk to my friends, and yeah, it's something really cool I like to do outside of school. Very young. I'm the baby of the family. So it goes Douglas, Alec, then me. My family holds me accountable for my choices and my behavior, and they teach me about expectations for life in the community and living on my own. My family expects me to roll with the punches, like flexible, and they help me with decision making. And my brothers are really big role models to me because they're like my best friends. My plan is to go to work at Sephora and the TD Garden and continue working at the Ready Tavern. And I want to make sure to keep in touch with my friends from Macy. Getting a job at the TD Garden, I mean, wow.
So if anybody on the call has good connections to anybody at TD Garden, I think we have somebody who would make an excellent employee and just be very engaging with everybody who ever goes there. So I think she's an absolute phenomenal example of somebody who's really enjoying a good life because of all her very many social valued roles and all the friends that she has in all kinds of different places where she visits throughout her daily life. So very enriched life.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Samantha and her family who participated in sharing this story with us as well. Samantha has been a contributor to Pathways to Friendship and Widening the Circle in the past, and actually is featured in our Friends at School toolkit. So it's really wonderful to see all of the different ways that she is contributing years later in her early 20s, being employed as a hostess, and really having that fashionista expertise and those goals to really see what's next. And it's an exciting time of life, and so thrilling for all of us to hear about all of those connections. So thank you again for that. Now, at this time, I am thrilled to welcome Jim Ross. Jim is the founding director of Widening the Circle, Pathways to Friendship, and he is going to share a few sentiments with us today.
Thank you, Katie. Hang on just a second here. Let me get a screen share going. My brief presentation won't be as elegant as some of the previous ones have been. One of the very first things that Marianne Brennan and I did when the project, now known as Widening the Circle, began in 2012, was to research what efforts were already being pursued to promote friendships between people with and without disabilities. There was actually discouraging little out there, even though some people, including many who are on this call today, had been doing such work for decades. And when we began to press people as to why folks were not seeing these friendships and relationships as a priority, we heard all kinds of excuses. It's too hard. It's not in my job description. We don't have enough time. The people we support don't care about this. Why would someone without a disability want to be friends with a daughter like mine? And on and on and on. Early on in this project, Marianne and I had an opportunity to present to families who were part of the Central Mass chapter of Mass Families Organizing for Change. And they had a picnic summer meeting that was held on a farm in Central Mass that raised very large draft horses, Percherons, Belgians, and such. And big horses create a lot of manure. So Marianne and I thought it would be fun to clamber up to the top of a huge pile of it. And what you see below us, we're standing about 10 feet up on what had been mucked out of the stalls on this farm. This actually became a symbol of our work. We needed to overcome a lot of horse shit if we were going to be successful at promoting friendships. So we chipped away a shovelful at a time, helping people understand the possibilities of deep and meaningful relationships between people with and without disabilities. Our work collectively, all of us on this call, is not done. There's still a lot of shit out there for us to deal with. But that pile is a little bit smaller now than it was in 2012. And when the youngest of you get to be my age, I'm confident that that pile will be very much smaller yet. So I want to wish everybody on this call good luck, and please grab your shovels and make this world a better place.
Thank you, Jim. Eloquent as always, and certainly, just continues to inspire us to move forward. And everywhere that we've come, even when you feel like you're in the thick of it, right, or being bogged down by even some of the most, nice qualities of things around us, there's always opportunity to continue to chip away. And we deeply appreciate your contributions to this project, your continued support, and your ever so eloquent advice, support, and guidance to all of us here. At this time, Phoebe Goodman is going to share a few thoughts from our regional inclusion networks. Many people here I know are part of those, so such a rich part of our work and something we so appreciate together. And Phoebe's going to encourage us to think about how each one of us can make a commitment to further action as well. So Phoebe?
Thanks, Katie. So we've been holding these regional inclusion network meetings for quite some time. They've evolved from, CCW creating our Commonwealth times into Pathways realm, and now they're continuing to evolve even beyond what we could have imagined. We have not only DDS providers joining these calls, but we have the community members joining too. We have families, we have YMCA recreation therapists joining our calls now. We have people who are coming from all different areas of our community who are interested in inclusion and this shared goal of friendship between people with and without disabilities. Right now, we have a combined Metro Northeast group, which we hope in the future we will expand and become even more regional and break back up again into just Northeast and Metro. But for now, those are combined groups. We have the Central West group combined as well currently, and we have a Southeast group too. So we're able to cover all these different regions, and we hope to expand that. So Katie will be sharing at the end some ways to get in touch and stay in touch with our regional networks. But what I wanted to share right now is that our recent meetings, we asked the participants of these regional inclusion networks to share with us what it meant to them to be a part of a networking group, a group that really has this specific focus, and what they gain by being a part and attending these meetings regionally with us. So I'm going to share some word art based on what was shared with us. Let me pull these up and let me just look at these for a moment. So when we ask people to reflect, coming together as a group, having this opportunity to be together and focus on this, what does that mean to you? And you can see a lot of connection and collaboration, sharing and inspiring. And the way today that we've been able to hear such wonderful stories, most days we don't all get to hear these amazing stories about friendship and what it can mean. So having the opportunity to hear from other people about the successes they've seen, the small steps in the right directions, and learning from each other has been very meaningful to a lot of people. And we're looking forward to continuing to expand these networks. And we'll be inviting you to make sure that you're involved or get involved if you're not already. And also then to extend that invitation to other people, that link to our meeting, who might be interested, who want to be a part of this work and part of this community, and an opportunity to connect with others and network. And so I want to, while leaving this up, harken back to what Beth was saying earlier, thinking about what is my part in all of this. Many years ago, I was lucky enough to hear Tim Vogt speak, and he asked us to make a commitment at the end about what we would do next. What are we going to commit to doing on our end? And I found that to be very powerful, to put it in my own hands, to think about the power that I hold, what steps I can take to further this. And so I'd like to invite you now to really think about, what is that part that you hold in this greater picture in connecting people with and without disabilities in friendship? What's your role in community inclusion, whether that's professionally, whether that's personally, within your family, within your neighborhood? What part do you play in it? So I'm going to just pause for about 10 seconds and just give everyone a moment to really think, what's your commitment that you're going to make to continue to further these efforts as we move forward? All right, so hold on to those commitments, keep them. We've made them within our regional networks as well. We did that as a New Year's resolution sort of activity to sort of think about what for the new year we were going to focus on. So keep those commitments that you're making to yourself. What I'm going to do too now is I'm going to pop into the chat a link, and this link will lead you to a very brief survey to give us some feedback about today's conference, anything you'd like to share. And Katie is going to share with everyone some wonderful resources to help us stay connected, to continue to grow and work together in these efforts.
Thank you, Phoebe. I so appreciate you just giving us a few moments to pause and reflect. There's so many wonderful stories and threads of inspiration today. So having that moment to really digest, and I hope we all continue to take some time and carry this through with us today. And, I know many of you are connected to our regional inclusion networks. We hope that you share the word. And for those of you that aren't, that you consider joining us. They're local efforts to be able to really be part of a community practice and opportunities where we can really brainstorm and think, how can we put these ideas into action together? So we typically do meet on Zoom, so they're pretty accessible regardless of the region you're in. And we will be sharing as follow-up a flyer with some of those meet-in dates as well. But you could get in touch with anybody on the Pathways team as well for more information regarding that. I really wanted to take another moment to thank the Pathways to Friendship provider organizations on behalf of the Pathways to Friendship team. You have invested so much time and commitment, and we so value your participation in the Pathways to Friendship initiative. You will soon hear from your Pathways facilitator, so we'll still stay connected, and we have several tips for you to stay connected and engaged with us as well. We will also be sharing an opportunity for us to connect. We'd really like to give a gift to recognize your efforts that you've really committed to advancing inclusion as organizations. We are so thrilled for everyone's participation today and the real dedication that we can feel even on a Zoom screen to supporting inclusion at the highest levels for people. All of the contributions to build communities and friendships between people with and without disabilities. So thank you. And Beth Mount, we have just truly been honored to share this time with you, celebrating connections. And at this time, we invite you to share some final reflections with our audience.
Well, what a gift, right? Such a gift, these 2 hours to take this time. And I've been reading the chat. Several people have had to leave early, and they were just so regretful that they had to leave early. And many people reported that they were dreading the next thing they were going to, while this had been so uplifting. One of the comments that was really touching to me was from a family member in Colorado that's a part of a group of young people in transition from high school. And she also had to leave, but she said that this had given her wind for her sails, that they have been so isolated, and the young people involved in that initiative have really been so limited by segregation, by a lifetime of segregation. And that hearing these stories, she basically said she hadn't stopped crying for the last 2 hours, right? That hearing these stories, as I heard and read her comment, it reminded her of this power, right? This deep longing, this immense spiritual power that is the essence of this work, and that we often don't even realize what's missing, right? Until we have a little time to touch and connect. And then we're reminded, oh my goodness, this is what I need. This is what we need. This is what our communities need. And I was also reminded of one of Judith Snow's contributions that is actually a paper. I want to be sure to get it right. It's notes on the gifts and assets that people who are vulnerable to rejection bring to community. So Judith, once again, was such a spokesperson about the gifts that people with disabilities, people who are vulnerable to rejection, bring to community. That is a part of what makes their real engagement and participation restorative to the larger community. This is something that is otherwise missing unless we do this work to bring these gifts in. And here are just a few of them that I think we've heard today. Judith, I can only imagine, is so excited and so filled with this beauty of what you're doing. That one of these gifts is the gift of hospitality, right? Just the gift of kindness. In every story, there's such a thread of, oh, this made my day. We talk every day. Who in the world hasn't had a fight in 30 years, right? My goodness, Jonathan and Joy. Like what? That's hospitality, right? What a gift is that kind of kindness, feeling welcomed, feeling encouraged, that the encouragement happens on all sides, right? It's so clear this is not about people with disabilities. It's about all of us feeling uplifted and being reminded of what life is for, what life is about. Another one of these gifts that Judith reminds us of is the gift of creativity, that the inclusion of people who are easily rejected calls forth a lot of invention, right? So my goodness, how much I loved that YMCA story, right? Where we got to hear one example after another of, it's Roman, right? Who just kept saying, wow, and I loved that it was even, the name of the place was even Old Colony, right? Like, okay, part of the way I heard that story is like, we're leaving this old colony, right? We're not going to stay in this old way. We are leaving this old colony and we are making a new world. We are inventing something that's never been done before. And we hear that in the doggy daycare center, right? Like, where was that until it was created by people? And now that it's there, they have more doggies than they can even handle, right? So what kind of gift is that? We didn't even know it was missing until it arrived. Making space for conversations. That was a hugely important part of what is another gift that Judith mentions, which is just simply presence, right? The chance to slow down, to be present, to be still, to explore spaces where we don't know what to do, but we are sitting with a question between us, how to build a better world, how to build a better life. And finally, and there's several others, but finally for now, I know I certainly felt this today, that Judith reminds us that people who are vulnerable to rejection and who have the opportunity for deep inclusion bring us emotional and spiritual healing, that once again, we have a chance to connect to what is life for? What is the meaning? Why are we here? And we certainly experienced that today. I just have one other comment about, Jim, in relationship to your pile of horse shit, that for community gardeners, my husband is growing a garden. Horse manure is a really valuable, right? It's not valuable as a whole pile. If you built the whole pile on the garden, it will kill everything. But it's very valuable one shovel at a time, right? It's very valuable. Like around here, people drive miles to load up their cars and trucks with horse shit. So when we think about the beauty of what is growing in the landscape of Massachusetts, what I see and hear you doing is taking that shovel, one shovel at a time, right? Taking the things that are not working, that are not really restoring and regenerating people's sense of meaning and purpose, throwing them out, turning them over, and making room for something new to come. And I so fully trust and expect that this group will continue to do that. And Phoebe has left you with the challenge of what is next. And I too would just remind you and ask you to, and maybe even make a few notes in relationship to these questions, which are also in the chat. And we invite you to either write some answers in the chat, or Katie is interested in hearing from you after today. You might not even quite know what the power of today was, right? Sometimes when things are big for me, I don't really know for a while what landed for me. But here are the questions to just sit with for a little while, and then as you go about your day, as you've listened to these stories, and do please keep in mind, thanks to Rachel and the diligence and discipline of many people in this group, you have a remarkable treasure trove of these stories, right, that can now be shared. And I know, I really hope that the young people in Colorado will have access to all of them, right? That will be soul food for that group. As you've listened to these stories and other ones that are available, what has touched you? What has landed for you today? Where is your growing edge? Where did you hear about something that you realize, you know, I don't know very much about that? And I can imagine that if we brought more of this practice in to the spaces that we are making to think about relationships, I can imagine that that could be really important. So where is your growing edge? And as important, what wants to grow with your help? And I would add, using Jim's images, not only what wants to grow with your help, but what shovel load of shit do you need to transform, or would you be interested in transforming in order to bring energy and life into what wants to grow? So the thing that you feel like you're up against, and that list is endlessly long, the things that you feel like you're up against, is there something in that, a nugget in that, that you can take a hold of and say, I'm going to transform this. I'm going to use this in the service of taking the next step. And then finally, what is a seed of the future that you want to cultivate? It might be a really small thing, might be a little tiny seed, or it might be another grand scheme like the one that Elin, Hal, and Leo and other people had in mind 10 years ago. Tom, I don't want to start naming names because I'm going to leave somebody out. I see so many of you here that have had these wild, grand schemes and visions of what is possible. And even though there have been times when it seemed like all the light has been going out of our work and what's possible for people, you've held on to that. And so what is that grand possibility that you want to hold together, especially now that you know you have each other, and now that you know that this much is possible, and now there is so much more. So each of us in our own way, cultivating capacities, gifts, connection, possibility, bringing something that we never imagined to life in the places that need us and the people that we are on the journey with the most. So I wish you the very best in this journey, and I look forward to seeing what comes from your beautiful garden in the years ahead. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. This concludes our formal presentation. And again, we would just like to say thank you to everybody participating today. all of the individual contributions, and really the collective cultivating together. And when I think of Beth Mount and John O'Brien, who's here today, the sums of companions on a journey, and certainly, you can feel that in these connections today. And we look forward to our continued work together, our continued partnership. And thank you all for your participation.